And we are live. Welcome, everybody.
To Sunrise Sages of the Pages. Hello. Okay, my goal was to giggle less, and I just started by giggling. So
That's okay.
that's hard.
Hopefully, you're all giggling with us right now.
Especially as we need to say our names.
You should start.
I should. No, I know. I'm Teresa.
This is Molly.
I'm Morgan.
And hello, everybody in the chat.
We're so happy you're with us. Thank you for coming. We love it.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
No, go. You go.
All right. I was going to jump on in to talk about welcome to this episode of Culture Club, where we review a book or a movie or something in the media to get our best take at learning, storytelling, and craft and what we can take away from it. So this time we did a book called Hidden Pictures, of which none of us can pronounce. We don't know how to pronounce the author's last name, but you'll see in our thumbnail and everything, and in the comments, we have their full name there if you want to read his book. There will be spoilers today, and the spoilers are going to start with Molly giving you the 3-minute overview of this book.
Oh, should I start the timer?
You can, Ready? But don't. I don't know if this is going to be 3 minutes. I'll do my best. Okay. So it starts with the main character, young woman, 21, and she is a recovering addict. She's been sober for 18 months, and her sponsor finds her a job as a nanny. There's an interview process. Basically, this family, mom, dad, young child, about 5 years old, just about to start, I believe, kindergarten, have moved back to the States from Barcelona. And it's in, I don't know, Pacific Northwest, somewhere in there. She interviews. She ends up getting the job. Little kid, really, really sweet little kid, little boy. Except for right away, the first thing you notice is he likes to draw all the time. And his drawings have creepy things in them. Like this creepy looking ghost woman in the drawings. And the mom kind of brushes it off and is like, oh yeah, that's Anya. It's his invisible best friend, right? It's his imaginary friend. And that's the way it starts. And you're like, okay, well, kids are weird. And it's a horror thriller book. So it's not that, but that's how it gets brushed off. She takes the job. It's fine. She's just babysitting this kid on the summer. They hang out. They go to the pool. They go to the library. They do all sorts of fun stuff. And he keeps drawing and he keeps drawing. And the drawings get weirder and weirder. Because no longer is it just like Anya with them at the breakfast table. It's Anya being strangled to death. Anya being buried in a hole. All of these things one after another. And the main character ends up meeting the lady next door, who the lady next door is like, oh, it's because someone died in the house. Technically, there's the main house, and then they have a little back house, which is where she lives. She lives in the back house. And, the eclectic weird lady who pretends to be a psychic next door is like, oh, it's haunted by this lady who died there and blah, 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 blah. And so the main character becomes convinced that this child is being haunted by the ghost of this woman who died in the house in the 1950s, 1960s, something like that. And tries to do a seance, tries to figure it out, ends up confronting the parents and saying, hey, I think your kid is haunted. They freak out. They're like, no, you're wrong. But they end up taking away his drawing stuff and discouraging him from drawing. Kid keeps drawing anyway, but now drawing in secret. And now she keeps finding his drawings, but his drawings are now hyper realistic. I don't know, hyper realistic, but advanced drawings that a kid can't draw. And she overhears conversations where he's in his room seemingly talking to this ghost. She busts in. He's in a trance, drawing, but the kid's left-handed, but he's drawing with his right hand. All this kind of stuff is happening. Again, she decides that she's going to do a seance. And the seance is weird. The seance happens. It It's weird. Like something definitely happens in it, but they don't know what. Like the puck starts moving around the board, but it's just nonsense. And the main character feels like she, that the spirit is there. However, like, again, it's just nonsense that's coming out of the board. What happens next? I'm trying to remember what happens next. Anyway, the parents find out that this has all been happening. They're really unhappy about it. They discipline her. They're like, just stop talking about this. No, this isn't real. We don't believe in ghosts. Like, you need to get your head on straight. We believe in science in this household. See. But she keeps digging. She keeps on doing stuff. And then one day she's taking care of the kid. The kid's upstairs for quiet time or whatever. And she falls asleep and the ghost possesses her. And she draws all over the walls downstairs in the house. And by the time she wakes up from her possession, they basically walk in the door. And they're like, no, we need to fire you. That's not okay. It's not okay that you left our son, like, didn't watch our son for 4 hours. It's not okay that all this stuff happened, right? And
Molly, you might want to mention that.
Yeah, please. What did I forget?
They're blaming it on her drug addiction. She's sober, but that's a theme, right?
Yeah, they're saying that she's unreliable and that she can't be trusted because she used to be a drug addict.
Yeah, and an interesting piece of this is that Carolyn, the mom, actually works with addicts. So she does a lot of like, oh, sweetie, it's okay. You have memory issues, and acting unpredictable is a sign of your addiction.
She's gaslighting her.
And yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that going on too.
Yep.
Anyway, back to the synopsis.
But at this point in time, the parents decide to fire her. They're like, all right, we're going to take the kid on the weekend. We'll have a party on Sunday, and then you're out. You need to be out. Mm-hmm. And she decides that the only way forward is for her to solve the mystery of what happened to the lady who died, because they never found a body. There's just blood everywhere. And she decides that these pictures are trying to communicate a story to her, and they're trying to communicate a message. So a few things happen. One, she's trying to decipher the message. Two, she does get help with the cute neighbor boy next door. I say boy, but like a year or two younger than her kind of thing. And they find out that the woman who supposedly died actually had a child. And that child is still alive. And that child is in a nursing care center in Ohio. The love interest actually decides to drive to Ohio. And they end up finding out over in that way that the woman never died. Basically, she fell in love with someone who was a different race, and then they eloped and they left, and her family decided that was too shameful back in the day and faked her death. So she was never dead there. There was never a ghost to begin with. So they get really confused. They're trying to figure all this out. The family comes home. She's really sad because she's like, what happened? And then she notices 2 more pictures that were on the wall, but kind of in the bottom. And these pictures like finally put together the whole story for her. Basically what happened was, and there's a lot of like little clues throughout, but basically what she realized happened is that the little boy wasn't their little boy. Their little boy was someone else's. A mother who didn't speak English, and that's why the Ouija board didn't make sense, because it was speaking to her in Hungarian. And this family stole the child from a different family and killed the mom. And then it was the child's mom was haunting the kid in the rest of the story.
Who they changed the gender of.
Yeah, so to get away with it, right? They dressed up the little girl. It was a little girl, dressed up the little girl as a little boy, moved across multiple states, said they had come from Barcelona where they never had. So there were clues in there, like they didn't speak any Spanish and the kid had never been on a plane. Just stuff like that, were peppered in to try to make this all work. But it was all coming down around them because, they're trying to put their kid in school and the kid doesn't have a birth certificate or vaccination records or anything. So all this is coming down. She figures out their story. They try to kill her. There's a thing where the husband
is obsessed with her
the husband
where
is handsy.
Ted, the husband, is obsessed with
It's
Mallory.
the same. It's the same trope of like, you know, the nanny comes in and the husband gets obsessed with the nanny inappropriately. So he tries to save her. The wife murders him, tries to murder her. She takes the kid, runs away into the woods. Eventually the ghost possesses the kid into stabbing the abductor mom. She, the babysitter, takes credit for it out of self-defense when the cops come, and then it all, like, the kid gets reunited with her family.
That was a pretty good synopsis. That wasn't bad.
I think it took more than 3 minutes, though.
Almost 10.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah.
Man, I need to figure out a way to go faster on those.
I don't know how you could.
I don't know. I agree. I don't think you could have, especially the ending of this one. It was so multi-layered.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, hun, with a thriller, I don't think you could have really.
I mean, I didn't even talk about
you did good.
The killing of the neighbor.
Nope.
Or the love interest hardly at all.
You did good. You did good.
Yeah. No critique, honey. Just telling you.
To answer some things in the chat. Hi, Santi.
Hi, Santi.
Sue accidentally tried to read a book called Hidden Pictures. That was actually from the Nancy Drew series.
That's awesome.
We love you.
Was she like, wait, they're doing a Nancy Drew? That's so interesting.
Yep. Holly asked, does she start drinking again? She does not start using again, drinking or drugs or anything. The character does stay sober the entire plot.
I would argue too huge plot hole, because not even a temptation. Like not even, it's as if she never was an addict.
There was one temptation, but it was pretty minor.
Yeah, and she's only 18 months sober and going through a great deal. And she has a good sponsor.
But she is kind of isolated. She is on her own in many ways, with a family that is gaslighting her, because they know the whole time. They know the whole time that the kid is haunted by her dead mother.
And boyfriend issues and lying to the boyfriend and getting caught. And none of that triggers any kind of like real serious flirt.
Yeah. But I would say that was probably an intentional thing the author did, because they wanted Mallory to be without fault.
Mallory is the main character.
Yeah, sorry. They wanted the main character to be without fault. Go ahead.
I disagree. I think the reason it's there is because it made probable cause for everyone to not believe her, and in some ways for her not to believe herself. But at the same time, it told the reader that it actually gave the narrator reliability from the reader point, because you know she wasn't using. So you never were in question about what she was experiencing, which was a choice, right? It was a choice that you knew what she was experiencing was real and weird. And at the same time, it gave other characters a reason to throw into question what she was experiencing.
But to go back to Morgan's point about, then why wasn't she tempted? Why didn't they do something with the temptation just to add some more tension to it?
I agree with you, Teresa, because I think there was a deliberate anti-religious setup there, where because she was religious, and one of the rules on the fridge when she first comes is that like the mom is the abducted mom, the mom who ends up being the villain, right? The antagonist is hostile towards religion, and she wears a cross, and it's a big, big part of her journey that she's religious. And so I think that's going to your point about, I think it's also going to your point about wanting us to believe that you can be an addict and be redemptive. And so I think that's where you're going. Right.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But also, I also think without fault, they didn't want an unlikable, unreliable, the author did not want an unlikable, unreliable character. One of those characters that you're like, well, I really like him, except for this. They didn't want any of that. They didn't want any gray area with this character. I think the gray area was that she was an addict, and you're right that the plot was set up so that it just created others the ability to gaslight. But she did not in any way behave like an addict at 18 months. And I think that was an intentional decision made.
Should we talk about some things we really liked, or should we jump into even better ifs?
Let's try to can do some quick, like what we liked about it. And then we can do some even better if. I liked the pacing of it. I thought that was good. I liked the intricacies of the plot for the most part. I enjoyed a lot of the twists. I thought the twists were mostly well done, to the point where you're like, oh, that's why ... And I always enjoy that. I didn't think it was too convoluted where you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. There was none of those for the most part.
No reaches.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the story about like Anya and the ghost and the Carolyn, who was a mom, she, her being the antagonist, there was nothing in there where I was like, you're pushing it. So I thought that was well crafted. I thought the dialogue was good. Overall, Carolyn, Ted, Mitzi, they were good, well thought out characters. Adrian, Teddy, very stereotypical. Teddy was the little boy / girl. Yeah. Any other good stuff?
For me, it's really interesting to hear what other people like about something, because some of the things that you like, I don't necessarily agree with. But for me, what I liked that it was a fast, easy read. Mm-hmm. I liked that it was easy to get through. Like you said, it was not something where I struggled to understand. It's not something where I felt like I had to be like, okay, now what happened now? And then what was the timeline? I got through it. It was, like it took me an afternoon to read. So I appreciated that. And there was nothing in there that I thought was plot wise, like egregious. Like you were saying, like there was nothing that I read it and I was like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like what, that wasn't set up at all. So I agree with that. I appreciated all of that. Like it was clearly a well thought out book on what the author made choices. And maybe I disagree with some of the choices, but it was well thought out in terms of like the plot of it. What about you, Morgan?
My favorite parts were the first 3 chapters. There was a prologue that Molly wasn't, because it took a lot to do the summary, so she wasn't able to talk too much about that. But it was a flashback from when she was an addict, and I thought it was brilliant. And when I read it, my hopes were like at 20 or 110 or whatever, off the charts. And it starts out, it's very showing. It's fantastic writing. She's trying to get clean. It's in the middle of her addiction. She's getting coffee, and she sold herself to this experiment. And she goes into this room, and she finds out the experiment is that these men are going to look at her inappropriately, like look at her places. And she is like blindfolded. She can't see them. And she has to like raise her hand or say every time she feels one of them looking like at her chest or something. And, she is like this aberration. She's really good at it. They tested like all these women, and they don't have the spider senses. They don't know, but she has this way of being able to tell when they're looking at her. And then because she's an addict, she loses contact. And so it doesn't come back till the very end. I was so, so sad, because to me, that set the bar of this very, very metacognitive evaluation of desire between masculine and feminine, between her ability to like sense it in a deep way. And then she's with Ted, who's like macking on her from day one, and none of it. There's no follow through. There's a
minor follow. I agree in general.
At the point,
very little follow through.
But at the point, he's so creepy. Anybody would.
No, it's because of the cameras. It's because of the cameras.
Because he put cameras in. Yeah.
For reference, she thinks her little cottage is haunted at one point in time because she keeps thinking people are like something is watching her, and she finds out at the end it's because he put in cameras and he is watching her.
Yeah,
but
so it's there,
I agree,
but it's subtle.
it is incredibly subtle, and it is missing through the most of the book.
I would argue that the way she describes being watched, though, I'm sorry, I'm just going to push back on that.
No.
I'm going to say I don't think it works. I know that that's what he was telling me, but the writing in the writing in the flashback, the way she describes the way men looking at her is totally different than the way she describes ghosts looking at her. She describes it in a different kind of place in her body. It's a different kind of tingling. It's very, very, very distinct. When the cameras are on her, I went back and checked. She describes it exactly like a ghost. She even uses that type of language. So there's nothing about it. If she can tell that men are looking at her in that way, she understands in that way, then there should have been, and it was demarcated in the way he described it in those two sections, then I wanted to see the style follow through and keep with that beautiful poetic, that's just my even better if, I guess. Go ahead.
So two thoughts on that one. So I'll push back a touch because I don't disagree. I'm just pushing back a little bit. I think that probably the way that the author and the editor were thinking that through was that when that prologue happened, she was high. She was on something at that point. And there was a conversation about how that wasn't real. That experience wasn't real. It was a made up memory of when she was on something. So to me, there may have been some gaslighting of the reader into thinking like, oh, but that scene wasn't real. But there's enough to it so that at the very end, you're like, oh, it was Ted. He was watching her the whole time. So from one perspective, well done. But from your point about how that prologue was better written than almost anything else in the book, as an editor and as someone who takes submissions, I'm seeing that all the time now. People spend so much time writing these beautiful, beautiful first chapters and prologues, and they're gorgeous and they're fantastic writers, but they can't follow through all the way. They cannot finish the promise that is made early on. And part of it is, I think, that as an editor, by the time you hit that last chapter, especially if you're trying to zoom through and do a full read, you're tired. and I think that is a common issue.
I will hurt, and then I'll let you talk, Molly. Sorry. I will defend that I thought, again, they re-edited so then I got really happy with the conclusion because it started going back to that level. So
it did.
For me, there was a big slumping middle stylistically that was very sloppy as far as just style. I'm not talking about plot as much. We can talk about plot in a minute, but just style. And then a really well-written climax again.
Which tells me that somebody caught that and tried to fix it and sent it back and was like, okay, the two pieces aren't matching. And maybe by the time they caught that, the plot was already so like, but wait, if we pull this and we correct this, then that comes tumbling down. And because it really was fairly complex. Go ahead and go, Molly. I'm sorry.
I'm going to say, so I've got a couple of things. One, I had a small epiphany. If you think this might be a book that you would like, right? A previous addict has to go to somewhat high society, and, the villain ends up being someone that she thought she could trust and maybe a woman in power. I think a better book is Ninth House. Not a thriller, but plays a lot with these kinds of themes, and I think does it a little better. For me, my even better if on this book, Morgan touched on one of them, which was stylistic continuity, or the continuity of like a theme, right? Like we started with one theme and then that theme disappeared, and it would have really been kind of cool. Like I thought she was going to have like this superpower that was going to help her throughout the book, but she just didn't. Something that for me, my big even better if is I thought it had really over reliance on tropes. So
that
almost
mine too. I agree.
Almost every trope you can conceive of, it really like leaned in to it. Between the crazy next door neighbor and the Ouija board and the rich people are the villains in the end. The father,
Funky next door neighbor, not next door, but
neighbor boy, young man. I don't know. There's that.
She lies about her past, and that almost breaks them apart, and they have to have redemption. Yeah.
Yep. The dad they hire the maid, and the dad ends up like being inappropriate and hitting on her. Like all of like there were just a lot of things all at the same time that were very reliant on tropes.
Mm-hmm.
And even though like the plot worked in the end, I would have loved to have seen like something truly surprising, especially because I don't read a ton of thrillers. So if I can recognize that they're trope upon trope upon trope, even the fact that she's like a recovering addict is kind of a trope. I just would have liked to see occasionally more freshness.
So I'll push back on that because there is a lot to be said for tropes. And there's a lot to be said for readers picking up a book and being like, that was exactly what I thought it was going to be. It was popcorn. And that's what I said before we started I was like, it was a popcorn book. I liked it. I kept turning the pages. But at the end, I was like, all right, I'm good. I'm not going to read it again. It was popcorn. I enjoyed it for what it was for the moment. And that's okay. There's a lot to be said. And a lot of authors make a very good living on tropes and doing tropes well. I think my big, even better if I really did not like the Ted, the dad, how he went after Mallory, and it wasn't just the cameras and that he watched her. It was that he was like, I secretly know that you love me too, and we're going to run away together, and we're just going to get rid of Carolyn because she's crazy. And I was like, okay, no, that's a little too, I think that was a little too tropey for me.
And it came a little bit out, like you got kind of
it was
like
a little
creeper
out of left
vibes
field
from him occasionally in the
Not
book,
much.
but not to that level all of a sudden.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's our analysis on Hidden.
Should we each have one like final sentence summary thought? And then we can go to first pages?
Okay.
All right. My summary final thought is fine book. Read it in an afternoon. Wouldn't read a second time.
popcorn. That's my thought. It was popcorn.
I'll just third it. I mean, there's nothing. If you want tropes, and actually, if you want to see a well-done climax, I actually think the climax is really good with pacing and reveals. I think the author's really good. If you're writing climaxes and you want to study climaxes, how to do them right with really good reveals, I would say read this book. If you want to see writing fall off in the middle,
read this book.
Read this book. If you want to see a saggy middle dragging something down, I think you can just juxtaposing the style between the two ends. I just think there's a lot for authors to learn.
Yep.
I love that. You don't always learn from the perfect examples.
Oh no, I would say you learn from, well, this sucked. How do I not do this?
Well, it's such a good example of you can write this prologue that my husband and I, we were audiobooking it together. We were so excited about the prologue. We're like, this is the best thing we've read. And we were reading Lee Bardugo together and we thought it was better. We were like going off about how this is the best writing. We were so excited. And then each chapter until finally I was begging him to stay with me. And then at the end, we listened to it and he's like, okay, it was acceptable. You know, that was his thing. It was acceptable.
It was popcorn.
It was popcorn.
Can't go wrong with popcorn.
Popcorn with a good start.
Well, let's see what other people's good starts are. Can we do pages?
Yeah. Let's do pages. All right, for
Okay.
reference, everybody, we take first page submissions. So if you want to hear your first page read by us, critiqued by us, go ahead and submit. Go to semisagesofthepages.com, go to the Culture Club section. There's a big button right there that says submit here, and you could hear us review your first page. Quick couple of reminders. One, we keep these anonymous. We will never say who you are. If you want to accept and you want to say that was me, that's fine, but we'll never out you, so to speak. And we also use the even better if method throughout, but you will get a real critique. Miss anything?
Nope.
No, you did great.
Who are we starting with? Which one are we starting?
Teresa, because it's her turn.
Okay. Lay it on us, Teresa.
All right. So this one has no title, and it is a fantasy. All right, here we go. The 5-year-olds stared at each other from opposite ends of the nursery. For a moment, no one in the room made a noise. The little boy's mother cleared her throat and inclined her chin at the little girl. What's her name? If it pleases your majesty, her name is Avia. Avia? Avia. We'll say Avia, the guardian said, his meaty hand resting on the girl's head. The man wasn't being rude or incomplete by not listing her surname. She didn't have one. The queen suppressed a frown. How ridiculous to imply a name would be changed simply because it wasn't pleasing. But it would only make the moment more awkward if she explored the semantics surrounding common phrases when the man was just clearly trying to do his job. Instead, she looked over the little girl. Avia's eyes focused straight ahead as her back stayed ramrod straight. She wore the same uniform as her guardian, albeit smaller, black breeches with an embroidered black vest. Someone had tried to fit the traditional flat-brimmed black cap to her head, but it sat askew on a mess of frizzy curls that went in all directions. The queen could not help but think of the disarray as a tell, a reminder. This wasn't just a little girl. Avia was a monster, a murderer. The little boy tugged on his mother's arm. With a small nod from her, he rushed across the space. Avia didn't move until her guardian gave a small nudge. Even then, she only took a few steps forward. That didn't deter the princeling who skidded to a stop right in front of her. My name's Jaren, he said, smiling like a sunbeam. My mom says we're going to be best friends forever. The queen pursed her lips. That wasn't what she'd said. Oh, I like this one. There's a lot going on. And I so apologize if I mispronounced that name.
I think the world building is really interesting. I like the idea that children are introduced early and that you've got this innocence of the juxtaposition of the frizzy hair, which gives you this cute, wild, innocent vibe, and then it's so powerful juxtaposed against the fact that she's a monster. And then you have to wonder if the queen is a monster, who am I rooting for? So at the end of this page, I think one of the questions that keeps us reading is, who am I rooting for? Right now, I think it's the prince.
Oh,
I really like his, he changed it to make it positive and nice, right? I mean, we get the idea that the mother said something nasty and he made it hopeful and beautiful, the innocence of the young prince who, I really like him. So I would read to learn more about him and his journey. I think that's really interesting.
I love the smiling like a sunbeam because especially with kids, you really can see that. That's a wonderful, unique visual that I really, really like. I like the description of the clothes. This tells us a lot about the character and also of the world. We've got a little girl who's dressed the exact same as I believe a male guardian. Black breeches, embroidered black vest, and then a traditional flat-brimmed black cap. That kind of made me think of like Three Musketeers. I kind of was having those visions of like, the feather sticking out and, there's going to be a sword coming out soon.
Yeah.
But like the rapier, not like an English broadsword.
Oh, yeah. Like fancy finesse.
Yeah. On God.
I think for me, I think the mood is interesting on the juxtaposition of like how different characters are feeling, right? Like we clearly have, someone who's nervous about the queen. We have the queen who's like, for some reason, introducing her son to a little girl who she thinks is a murderer or a monster. And then you have, you know, the little girl is seemingly nervous, but the boy, like you guys said, like he's just running around like, hey, how's it going? We're gonna be best friends forever.
And the queen's like, what?
That wasn't what I said. And in the chat we have Talia saying that's intriguing. She wants to know why the queen is letting the prince play with a murderer.
Yeah.
Who did she murder?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Did she really murder someone? Sue wants to know, how did a 5-year-old murder someone? Holly wants to know, does the prince have special powers to turn monsters into starbursts of joy?
I want to read her
like
story. Good job,
Yep.
Holly.
I like it.
All right, even better ifs. I'll start. Go ahead.
Go for it.
No, go ahead, Molly.
I really would have loved to have been pulled more into the scene. I think there's a little bit of description, but there's not much like tactilely there's not much that really draws you in. It's kind of almost like you're observing from afar in some ways, and I would really like to get drawn more into the moment.
I think one way to do that would link to my comment, which I would say some of the verbs don't match the tone. So inclining the chin, or rude, or I can't remember that sentence. It was rude
Inclining the chin, like,
yeah, incline. So you've got this young scene, this very young energy. It's, moving back and forth, and inclining the chin feels like such a heavy phrase. And between some of the descriptions felt like weighed down the tone of the dialogue and pulled me out of the scene by describing. I would say there were parts of it, for example, the inclining the chin, and then also the comment about being rude, where I feel like the story was showing me that. So you don't have to tell me they're rude because I could see it. So show me that they're rude. Don't tell me that they're rude.
Yeah. For me as well, there were too many characters introduced. I was struggling to keep them straight, and there's no, other than the little girl, there's no description or really introduction of these characters. And that's so hard to do on a first page. But every time a new character comes up, they need to be introduced, or if they haven't been seen in quite some time, reintroduced to the reader. A good rule of thumb that I try to stick to, although sometimes it's not possible, is only 3 characters in a scene. And you could have a character leave and another character come up, or you can do that virtually where there's a bunch of characters talking and only 3 of them are having the conversation, and you don't have other people chiming in on it. But there's been a lot of studies done on this, and most people can only keep 3 people in their head. So every time there's another character, there's almost a hiccup in the brain of like, oh, I forgot about them. So that would kind of be my even better, if fewer characters in the beginning. But I like the setting, and I'm really, really intrigued by what's going on.
Good job. Thank you.
Should
Thank
we
you
go to
for
our
sharing
second
with us.
one?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
All right, our second one. I'm moving. This one is a thriller. Hopefully we can all still hear me. Okay. The week before I turned 16, I killed my best friend. The words choke me like the bulking pills Aaron prescribed just after I got out. Got out. It's the wrong phrase. No one gets out. Not really. My mouth cracks dry as I press my purse against my stomach. Should I tell him what's hiding in that purse? About this morning? About why he'll never see me again? I killed my best friend, I repeat. Why am I telling him something that happened years ago? Something I've never told anyone. Something I'm not sure I want him to know. Okay, we can start with that. Aaron slides his long yellow legal pad off the desk and into his lap in a manner so nonchalant, it's as if I've just said something as banal as, I don't like coffee, or it's stuffy in here. That annoys me, but not as much as the way he sits, too relaxed, with his thighs open, his blue eyes patiently search mine. My hands fold in my lap, my eyes drop to the floor, and my lips pressed together in a reverent obedience I resent, but can't change. Aaron shifts forward in his seat. His eyebrows arch with concern. I should be past this. Until this morning, I thought I was. I dig my nails into the back of my hand until the pain reminds me I'm not dreaming. And if I'm not dreaming, they're here.
Ooh. Oh, that was not where I thought it was going to end.
Sometimes I love like the cold reads on these.
I know.
I really enjoyed the cold reads.
Is she crazy?
I don't think we can tell quite yet. I liked that I immediately knew it was there, that Aaron was a therapist. I loved that. And I knew it even before like the legal pad came over. It was the okay, we'll start with that. And then the description of the therapist, that the relaxed states. And you know exactly what that is. That is the professional I am listening pose. And it's one I fall into. Morgan, as a teacher, I'm sure you do it too. You know, a student comes in and starts, you know, talking a certain way or crying or whatnot. And like your entire body language changes into I'm open and I'm listening.
And professional. And I'm professional.
And professional. Yes.
I can't say the wrong thing. I have to be careful.
Yep. I'm here. I'm present in this moment. I'm paying attention to you. I'm not listening.
Crossed. Yeah.
Tell me what you have to say.
Shoulders back, boobs out. No.
That's how we'll get this video suppressed.
My leg, and like legs crossed, and if you've got a notebook, it's there, but you know, you're minimal taking notes. I knew exactly. That was fantastic writing, because you're painting the picture with minimal words and the reader can just fill in the detail.
I think I liked it from then on. The bulking pills line was a little weird.
Didn't work for you?
No. And like the first like part of it just felt a little uneven, like a little over explaining. So I think there should have been some of that cutting, but I liked it from the interaction on, because then I was like, is she crazy? Is she not crazy? Like,
I really liked the inner monologue. I liked it a lot. As well as one of our comments said that they don't normally like first person, but this one was gripping right off the bat.
Oh, really? So they feel like it works from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
And someone else says they want to know, how do we get more of this story? So I mean, I'm certainly gripped. This is certainly one of those where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna keep reading. Tell me the story. How did this happen? I want to know. Is this person crazy? Are they not crazy? Did they really kill their best friend? Is it like a metaphor, or is it like was there just an accident? You know, someone was driving while texting. I don't know.
Was there something towards the end about the character like not being able to control themselves, or like?
At the very, very end. So I actually took her as a liar. As unreliable and manipulating the situation. That was my first instinct, was that she was a liar, unreliable, manipulating the situation. But they're here. I was like, oh, I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think there's some clues in there, like no one gets out, not really. And then it's the
like
ending,
mafia.
Yeah, and then the ending is they're here. To me, it clearly says like she is on the run. She escaped from something. You know, who knows what it is? Whether it's the mafia or a bad marriage or the police. Or
I took it. I thought it was paranormal.
Yeah. Oh, she's like,
we don't know.
Like they're around her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that could be.
But, you know, and Morgan kept saying, you know, maybe she's crazy. I didn't necessarily get that, but unreliable narrator. Absolutely.
Yeah. I doubt that the character is crazy, but certainly you could be working up to other people think she's crazy.
which is what Hidden Pictures, the one we did today, kind of did with the drug addict. There's some similarities, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so even better ifs. What do you think?
I was taking notes. Nothing stood out to me. I think maybe the pill thing, maybe I
It's got to
agree.
change. I don't like that. And I think
Yeah.
there was a not ready, like something, and then not ready. There was a doubling down and it was done twice in a row. And I think the second time was unnecessary. I think pick one of the two of those. I don't think you need to double down twice that early, because I think by doubling down in the character's head twice that early, it kind of cuts us off from the next part, which is the therapist's flat reaction, which I agree with Teresa's, where it kind of really picks up. Because then all of a sudden you're in the scene, I think.
Yeah. Here's my very small one, right? This is nitpicking. We're nitpicking here.
Yeah, I agree.
But talks about the way he sits with his thighs open. I think that just distracted me. I was like, what do you mean his thighs open? Like, he's like pulling his thighs apart, like, hello.
Do you think that means she has like a thing with him though? Like,
I thought there might be something sexual, but I also thought that he was maybe like, one of the guys who's kind of like leaning over and like, again, he's relaxed.
See if he's
I'm
leaning
listening.
over, right? Like he's leaning over like this kind of thing. I just wouldn't describe it like that. It was distracting to me.
I had him sitting back with his like literally legs open.
Yeah, well, then it would be knees apart, wouldn't it? I don't know. Maybe it's the word thighs.
So you like knees apart better.
Maybe it's the word thighs.
One is more sexual for sure.
Which might be intentional by the author. Again, we've got an unreliable, manipulative.
His thighs are open. Perhaps. They're inviting.
They're like, I know, hello. Right? I don't know. But
maybe she's looking at that as a way to control the situation. I felt like she absolutely would be controlling the situation. You walk into the room with a therapist and you're like, I killed my best friend. And the therapist is like, okay,
let me open my thighs. Sorry.
But
Sue
says
maybe
author,
just
we totally respect you. Whatever choice is good there, they're both, fine.
Yep. Holly says just maybe legs open. Sue says legs sprawled apart. Someone else says man spreading for days.
Men.
I love the chat.
Oh, chat's good.
Chat. You guys are great. All
That's
great.
For fun.
All right. I think those were our pieces. So thank you very much for authors who submitted. Please keep submitting. We love to do this. We think it's good for us. Hopefully it's good we've gotten feedback from multiple people that they enjoy it as well. So again, if you're interested, maybe you're working on something, you want some feedback, want some ears on it, and you want to stay anonymous, don't hesitate to submit. We take 300 words or less. www.semisagesofthepages.com. Click on the Culture Club tab. Big button that'll tell you to submit right there.
And then like us.
Yeah.
Yes, please. We really are trying to hit some subscriber goals.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too, we are looking at changing things up coming soon. So we have a lot of really fun ideas, and we're going to be talking them out and coming up with a plan of action. So super, super excited. If there's any ideas, comments, anything you guys have, any direction you'd like us to go, longer episodes, shorter episodes, more
different
focus
topics.
on this, whatever. Tell us. I mean, we're at the kind of rebuilding points. So now's the time.
All right. Thank you all for joining us this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. If you liked us, go ahead and like us. If you liked it a lot, go ahead and subscribe and join us next time. Bye all.
Take care.